أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي أنزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا والصلاة على من أذهب عنهم الرجس أهل البيت وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A spiritual disease is one of the most intense diseases a human being could be afflicted with. Because if you look at the human being, what differentiates him from other creatures is the idea that an angel has been fashioned by the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being a soul void of a body. An animal has been fashioned by the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being a body void of a soul. You'll see insan is the only creature that's a mixture of both body and soul. And it's in this notion where the dominance and superiority of man is found. That's why when our blessed Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayhi he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ الْمَلَائِكَةَ بِالْعَقْلِ دُونَ الشَّهْوَةِ وَالْغَضَبِ. Imam says, indeed Allah has created angels with an intellect void of anger and desire. وَخَلَقَ الْحَيَوَانَاتِ بِهِمَا دُونَهُ. And He has created animals with anger and desire void of intellect. Imam then tells us what gives insan superiority and dominance. He says, وَشَرَّفَ الْإِنسَانِ بِإِعْضَائِهِ الْجَمِيعِ. He says, and He has honored man by giving him everything. Meaning the animal only has physical worries to worry about. His food, his relaxation, how to relieve himself. An angel only has spiritual concerns. It doesn't have a physical body to take care of. It doesn't go to the doctor when it gets sick because it doesn't have a body. But insan is the only creature that's a mixture of both body and soul. That just as I have physical diseases that I have to worry about and cure, there are spiritual diseases which are as intense, if not more intense. Why do I say more intense? Because you'll see a physical disease could be easily seen through signals. For example, when I have a cold, my nose becomes red, for example. Or when I have a certain disease, my hair, begins to fall. May Allah protect us from such diseases. You'll see spiritual diseases, neither could they have signs, nor could the human being recognize them in the sense that he could live for years without knowing that he has a spiritual disease. Another reason why a spiritual disease could be seen as more dangerous than a physical disease is that when I have a physical disease, I go to the doctor, he gives me one dose of medicine and I can cure it. A spiritual disease isn't cured through a specific pill or a dose of medicine. It takes a process of determination, discipline, and indeed, as one would say, you have to be willing to remove that disease. The third reason is that you'll see a physical disease is painful. When I have a cold, it doesn't feel good. When I have cancer, it doesn't feel good. When I have AIDS, it doesn't feel good. A spiritual disease could be seen as pleasurable to the soul. Imam Khomeini, he makes a very interesting comment. He says, what's dangerous about love of this world is that typically a disease is painful. He says spiritual diseases could be seen as pleasurable to the soul. An arrogant person may be arrogant because he feels joy in that arrogance. You'll see a hypocrite, he may practice hypocrisy because he feels joy in that hypocrisy of his. Therefore you'll see a physical disease is painful to the body, whereas a spiritual disease may be seen as pleasurable to the soul. And just as within the physical world you have certain diseases which are more intense than others, within the spiritual world it's no different. There are layers and degrees and echelons to the intensity of spiritual diseases. One of the best ways we can tell which disease was of the most intense diseases spiritually is by taking a look at history. In history you'll see the first sin that took place in time, the last sin that will take place in time, and the most tragic of sins that took place in time all have one cause. Number one, the first sin was the famous and popular sin of or Qabil killing Habil. وَقَتَلَ قَابِيلُ هَابِيلَ. Allah comes and says, Qabil killed Habil. Many of us may be thinking that the cause of Habil being killed by Qabil was envy, hasad. But it wasn't envy. It was something that became stale after it was envy and turned into a different disease. You'll see Adam alayhi salam, he would come, he would tell Habil that you will be the successor after me. Instantly, Qabil would instantly feel envious considering the fact that he was older than Habil. He would tell them, no problem, I'm going to give you a solution. Both of you offer sacrifices for Allah. Whichever sacrifice Allah accepts will be the one that I will appoint as my successor. And Hayat al-Qulub, Alam al-Majlisi mentions that you have Habil who would come forward and he would put a number of sheep. As you know, he was a shepherd and he had a number of sheep under his arm. And Qabil would come and he would present ears of corn. Ears of corn which were not in the best of shapes. A hadith tells us that he presented very dirty and ill-looking ears of corn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would zap the sacrifice of Habil, sending the message to Qabil that your sacrifice was not accepted, meaning Habil is the successor after Adam. Instantly, Shaitan would come and he would begin to send messages to Qabil. What did he tell him? He told him, Qabil, you will grow older and Habil's children will laugh at yours because now they'll see that you are the successor and not their father. Go and kill him instantly. What was inside of his heart? Envy. Habil wasn't killed instantly by Qabil. Qabil waited. Hadith tells he waited a few days, even a few weeks. It wasn't something instantaneously. That envy transformed after it hardened, after it became stale, into a grudge. Haqid. Haqid is what? Haqid is the next level after envy. I may see somebody and I'm envious of him. For those few minutes, that's envy. If I don't eradicate that envy, or if I don't do a number of things, either rise to his level or bring him down to mine, which I'll come to and expound upon in the next points, that envy becomes a grudge. It becomes haqid. You'll see Qabil killed Habil. The first sin in history wasn't because of envy, it was because of a grudge. You'll see furthermore, you look at somebody like our 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu sharif. Our 12th Imam, some hadith tell us, at the end of time, there will be a Jewish lady who will come and attempt to kill him. Now, of course, we have no basis in Shia narrations in regards to this philosophy, where a Jewish lady will come and kill our Imam. But nonetheless, we'll go with it for the sake of argument. You'll see that a Jewish lady, a hadith come and say, that will come and she will attack our 12th Imam and she'll stab him and indeed he will die. Now, I've never seen a female who just wakes up one day and decides to kill the 12th Imam. There must have been something in her heart, and it was a grudge. Why? You see, because Jews are expecting the Messiah to come from the family of Ishaq, whereas Muslims believe the Messiah will come from the family of Ismail alayhi salam. That's why you'll see many of the Jews forbade themselves from believing in the Prophet of Islam when he entered Medina, because they said, we've been expecting a Messiah from the family of Ishaq, you're from Ismail, unacceptable. And the same reason is why Jesus alayhi salam was attempted to be crucified by the people of his time. They said, oh Isa, you're telling us that a man coming after you by the name of Ahmad, Ya'ti Ba'di Rasulun Ismuhu Ahmad, it's from the family of Ismail, unacceptable. It must be for the family of Ishaq. Instantly they run after him, they attempt to crucify him. Allah then raises him, where he says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. He wasn't killed, he wasn't crucified, rather it made to appear so. Therefore you see there was a grudge in the heart of this Jewish lady, who some hadith come and say by the name of Jamila. So you see the first incident was a grudge, caused by a grudge. The last incident caused by a grudge. In the middle, the greatest of incidents was also a grudge. You'll see Abu Abdullah al-Hussein would be laying on the sands of Karbala. Shimr ibn al-Jawshin would be sitting on his blessed chest. Instantly Imam would tell him, Ya Shimr, ala ta'arifuni. Oh Shimr, do you not know me? He said, yes, I know you, of course. And then Hussein ibn Fatima bint Muhammad. He says, you are Hussein, son of Fatima, daughter of Muhammad. He would instantly tell him, then if you know me, why do you want to kill me? Look at the grudge. He would tell him, بُغْضًا مِنْ أَبِيكَ عَلِي ibn Abi Talib. He would say, because of that grudge and hatred I have in my heart towards your father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen died many years ago. No, he's saying this envy transformed until it became a grudge. That's why you'll even see Yazid ibn Muawiyah, may Allah curse him, when he was playing with the lips of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He would be reciting these famous lines of poetry where he would say, ليت أشياخي ببدر شهدوا جزع الخزرج من وقع الأزل لأهلوا واستهلوا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشل لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. Yazid would recite these famous lines of poetry, who of course he didn't write them, they were written by scholars before him, but he came and reiterated them. He would say لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا. He would say Hashim played with dominion. No message came down, no revelation was ascended. Listen to what he would say. He would say, لَيْتَ أَشْيَاخِ بِبَدْرٍ شَهِدُوا. I wish my forefathers in Badr would come and witness what I've done to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They even say that while he was playing with the lips of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he would recite these lines. He would say, يَوْمًا بِيَوْمِ بَدْرٍ. He would say, one day for the day of Badr. You killed my forefathers, O Ali, in Badr. I'm going to kill your grandson here in Karbala. Therefore, you'll see the first, the middle, and the last, all were incidents which stemmed from the disease of grudge. Therefore, this disease of a grudge, someone may come and be asking, how does it evolve within the human being? Does somebody wake up one day and all of a sudden a grudge is created? No. There's an evolution to the grudge. You see, a grudge takes place when I see somebody better than me. When I see somebody who has, for example, a better body than me, we could say, or more knowledge than me, or more wealth than me, or people like him more than me, I have one of four options. Number one, I can rise to his level. I use my deficiency as an inspiration to rise to the level of other people. I say, for example, more knowledge than me. I don't become envious, I go and gain knowledge. I attempt to rise to his level, number one. Number two, I bring him down to mine. I don't have the ability to rise to his level. Therefore, so we can be parallel, I'll bring him down to my level. How? Through instigating, through disrespect. And this is what we see within the time of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. People would come and tell him, he would say, ask me, I'm the speaker of Quran. People would tell him, how many pieces of hair do I have in my beard? They would try to bring him down to their level. That's why when Allah speaks about the ignorant in the Holy Quran, He says the wise are those that when they pass by the ignorant, marru kirama. Allah says, إِذَا مَرُّوا بِالْجَهْلِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. If they pass by the ignorant, they pass with peace. Meaning what? They don't allow them to bring them down to their level. Number three, you'll have somebody who has no future, he has no hopes for himself. Therefore, if you see somebody better than him, it really doesn't affect him. Now, the fourth person, if he doesn't bring somebody down to his level, and he doesn't rise to his, yet he still wants to become somebody in his life, this is when a grudge is born. A grudge comes into existence. I see he's better than me. Neither am I rising to his, nor is he coming down to mine. Instantly, in that moment, a grudge, the seed of a grudge is planted in his heart. And that's why you'll see this grudge has an unbelievable effect on the life of the human being. Number one, you'll see one of the symptoms of a grudge is that the grudged upon isn't affected, rather the grudger is. You see, some diseases, the one who is, for example, I'm arrogant. I act arrogant towards a human, and that arrogance is within me. I'm affected, the one who is being the victim, and also the one who is arrogant. Both of them are affected. With hasad or haqid, a grudge, the one who is grudged upon doesn't get affected. When I grudge, for example, upon my friend because he has better looks than me, he doesn't get affected by it. It's only you. You begin to burn yourself like the sun. The sun, it burns and burns itself until eventually the sun will die. That's why when you look at Jahm ibn Safwan, the leader of the Jahmi sect, his views towards the finite or infinity of hell, which I spoke about in the first night of Ramadan, he comes and he says eventually the hell will eat itself and it will disappear. The one who has a grudge in his heart, he's eating himself. That's why when the hadith comes and says that al-hasad ya'kulu al-iman kama ya'kulu an-nar al-hadab. The hadith says that hasad kills iman as fire eats the wood. You see, if I have a fire, for example, I throw paper in there, I throw, a cup, styrofoam cup in there, it begins to burn. Hasad and haqid kills the iman, just as fire kills the wood. That number one, you'll see the grudged isn't affected, rather the grudger is, number one. Number two, you'll see haqid replaces inner tranquility with inner uproar. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's created insan in a way where He wants itma'innan to be in his heart. That's why when we recite in the Quran, we say, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ القلوب. We say, indeed, with the remembrance of Allah, hearts become satisfied. Allah wants us to have satisfied hearts. A grudge comes and instills uproar and madness within the heart of the human being. To what extent? To the extent that he begins to do evil things to relax himself. It inverts the heart upside down. Typically, a good human being, he does good things, he gives charity, he feels good. Or if he commits a sin, he feels bad. For the haqid, the one who has a grudge in his heart, he has to do evil things to make himself feel good. Al-qalb ma'kus, the heart becomes inverted. Good makes him mad and evil makes him happy. That's why when you look at the terrorist, why does he go around blowing up people? It's because he has so much hatred in his heart. When he looks in the mirror, see, when you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, you can either go and fix your looks or you can break the mirror. A terrorist goes around breaking the mirror. How does he break the mirror? By blowing himself up between the shrines of Hussein and Abbas, for example. By killing 55 people in Baghdad, like the other day. By exploding the masses of Shia and Parachin of Pakistan. He has so much hatred in his heart. See, when you have a bottle, you shake it, it's eventually going to explode. The terrorist, he shakes himself. There's so much anger inside, so much hatred towards society. He doesn't like haqq, he doesn't like Islam and Shiism. Therefore, what does he do? He goes and he blows himself up. And he feels good about it. You go to this terrorist, you tell him, why are you doing this? He'll tell you, because, I want to have dinner with the Holy Prophet of Islam, and I'm going to be sitting down. He really has this idea where if he kills people, he'll be sitting down with the Prophet of Islam. Allah says, take these people as an example. He does so much evil that he begins to see good as evil and evil as good. That's why they tell us that one day there was a man who entered the shrine of Al-Abbas alayhi salam, and he was ready to detonate. He was ready to pull the string, exploding himself. They say while he was about to pull it, a number of people came, they captured him, and they were able to stop him from doing such an act. They said that they saw him crying because a number of people came, they began to throw slippers at him, they began to hit him, they got angry at him. The servants of the shrine of Abbas alayhi salam, they would come to him, they would tell him, we're sorry for hitting you, this shouldn't have happened. He would say, no, I'm not crying because you hit me. He said, why crying? He said, I'm crying because you just deprived me of Jannah. You just deprived me of Jannah. Meaning when I kill people, this is my ticket to Jannah. You see this man, he has such a grudge in his heart, such haqad in his heart, that he begins to do evil things and sees them as ways of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why they say, after Umar ibn Sa'ad killed Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he would go to Yazid ibn Muawiyah, he would raise his hands like the beggar that he was to Umar ibn Sa'ad and Yazid Muawiyah. He would raise his hands. He would say, إِمْلَأْ رِكَابِي فِضَّةً أَوْ ذَهَبًا فَإِنِّي قَتَلْتُ السَّيِّدُ الْمُهَذَّبًا. He would say, fill my hands with gold and silver because I've just killed the good Sayyid. He's good, why do you kill him? He knows it's evil, but he still continues to do it. إِنِّي قَتَلْتُ السَّيِّدُ الْمُهَذَّبًا. He knows he's good. Notice the grudge. It inverts your heart upside down. Therefore, you'll see that as intense as the grudge of disease is, and the symptoms it creates, and the evolution of a grudge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and begins to give us cures for this grudge. One of the best cures and detectors of a grudge and disease within a human being is the act of dua. You see, a human being who attempts to be good, he first has to be consistent in his goodness. To reach a level of goodness, you have to be consistent. If I want to have a nice body, I have to be consistent in my diet, consistent in my working out. Before I become consistent, I first have to purge evil from my heart. I have to remove the evil. How? Through istighfar. Before purging the evil, I first have to detect the evil. Dua comes and allows us to detect the evil within us. In what way? You'll see, when I raise my hands for dua and I begin to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I begin to feel tears falling, then this is a sign of a sincere heart. Many of you have noticed in the month of Ramadan, when you raise your hands for dua, any disease in the heart begins to affect you while you're in dua. Dua comes and detects the evil. I raise my hand and I say, Ya Rabbana, atina fi dunya hasana wa fil akhirah. Oh Allah, give me goodness. A human who has no disease in his heart, he feels the dua flying. He feels as if he's somewhere else. One who has a disease, instantly that disease pops up in his mind. He begins to think about it. Say, for example, he has hatred towards somebody. That hatred pops up. Say, I have a problem with my father, a problem with my sister. That problem emerges. Dua comes and detects it. Dua is what? Dua, they would come to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. They would tell him, Ya Ali, what is the distance between the sky and the earth? People are expecting a number of miles, a number of feet. He would say, Da'watun mustajabah. He would say, an answered prayer. Dua is seen as the bridge between me and Allah. See, today you have FedEx, for example, that comes and sends you boxes in instants, in seconds. There it is next to you. Allah comes and says the FedEx of between you and I is dua. All you need to say is, Ya Allah, and there it is. It flies. It pierces. If you want to know a mu'min, look at him in the time of dua. And even the time of salah. Salah in essence is a form of dua. It's a bridge between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say when our fourth imam, it would come time for salah, they would see him trembling with fear. His skin would go pale. He would begin to sweat. His palms would get watery. They would tell him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we've never seen you in this state before. What's the problem? He would say, do you know between whose hands I'll be in a few moments? I'll be between the hands of the one who created me. Look at the level of focus in the salah of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Not only that, look at his master, Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. They say in the Battle of Siffin, while the Imam was praying, they say an arrow came and pierced into his heel. They would come to Imam al-Hasan. They would tell him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, your father has just been pierced with an arrow. When should we remove it? He would say, remove it when Ali ibn Abi Talib is in sujood. Because when Ali is in sujood, everything becomes secondary. You imagine, look at the level of focus in the salah of such a human being. Meaning, dua and salah comes and detects. It's a meter, it's a gauge. How many times have we been driving? And when you want to know if you have empty or full gas, you look at the meter. If it's on empty, that's a clear sign. You need to go to the gas station and put gas. Allah comes and says the meter and the gauge for your sincerity, for your spirituality is dua. It's what comes and allows you to know, am I a one who has a dead heart or am I one who has a clean heart? Now, of course, dua itself, I realize if I have sincerity in the dua through a number of other things. Number one, tears. Tears are one of the best gaugers for a human being's sincerity because you can't fake tears unless you're an actor. You cannot fake tears. Tears are very difficult. When the tear comes down, that's a sign of a heart which has no rust on it. See, a lot of times you'll see a lock which has water on it, and they call it corrosion. It's been outside for a while. You'll see a number of things beginning to build up on this rock. Corrosion. Allah comes and says, a heart which has no corrosion is a heart which could cry easily. You know, sometimes you're sitting down in a majlis, you're presenting, and you see somebody beginning to cry. You tell them, is everything okay? No, you don't even begin with the musibah. You say, Bismillah ar-Rahman. You see a man crying next to you. Did I say anything wrong? No. The minute you mention Allah, the heart begins to palpitate. Tears begin to fall. That when Allah comes and speaks about the mu'minun in the Quran, He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. The mu'mineen are those that when Allah's name is mentioned, the heart begins to palpitate. That number one, tears. That's why when we speak about tears in Dua Kumail, we say, Allahumma arham man ra'su malihi ar-raja wa silahuhu al-buka. We say, oh Allah, have mercy on the one whose capital is hope and his weapon is tears. Notice what Allah is saying. He's saying tears is a weapon. When the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, they come in, they stop us from crying for Imam al-Hussein, and they have problems with the majalis of Aba Abdullah. Why? We're simply crying for Imam al-Hussein. We're simply beating our chest. When the man comes in Arba'in and he detonates the bomb, killing millions of people, we're simply walking, we're not even harming you. He says, no. Tears is a sign of life. See, tears are usually some things that come down in a funeral. When I remember somebody who has died. With Imam al-Hussein, tears aren't a sign of his death. Tears are a sign of his life. Only with Imam al-Hussein. Tears are a sign of the life, that the man died 1400 years ago, but I'm still remembering him. What am I saying? I'm saying it's as if he died yesterday. That's why when the hadith comes and says, إِنَّ فِي قَتْلِ الْحُسَيْنِ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ حَرَارَةٌ لَا تَبْرُدْ أَبَدًا. For the death of Hussein in the hearts of the mu'min is a fire which will never be relinquished. It's as if he died yesterday. Tears. That's why they say when Allah speaks about the Christians within the Holy Quran, He says their sincerity is detected through their tears. He would come to the Prophet Allah, he would tell him, Ya Rasulullah, وَلَمَّا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. He would say when the Christians hear revelation coming to you, you'll see their tears begin to fall. Their eyes overflow with tears. On the flip side, just as tears are a sign of life, no tears is a sign of a dead heart. وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. May Allah protect us from dead hearts. You'll see Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, he mentions in a hadith, he says, مَا جَفَتِ الدُّمُوعِ إِلَّا لِقَسْوَةِ الْقُلُوبِ وَمَا قَسَتِ الْقُلُوبِ إِلَّا لِكُثْرَةِ الذُّنُوبِ. Imam gives us the formula of why no tears fall. He says, eyes with no tears is a sign of a dead heart. And a heart which is dead is a sign of excessive sins. See, the problem with sins is that it leads towards a dead heart. Imam Ali alayhi salam gives us a number of things which cause the heart to die, and we mentioned this previously. For example, excessive laughter. Laughing excessively is a sign of a dead heart. You'll see him in the majlis, he's laughing. In the mawlid, he's laughing. Excessive laughter, you'll see. Number two, he tells us that excessive eating too much, is a sign of a dead heart, Imam Ali alayhi salam says. He says, number three, مُجَالَسَةِ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ, sitting with the luxurious. Now, of course, you'll see people who Allah has blessed them with wealth. They use that wealth in supporting the projects of Allah and supporting the masajid. When Allah comes and says that مُجَالَسَةِ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ, sitting with the rich, is a sign of a dead heart, in the sense that those who are rich and all they talk about is their richness. For example, you see the likes of, celebrities in the world today, like Donald Trump. You see him 24/7. He's thinking about his bank, speaking about the money that he has. Dead heart, there it is, material. I asked him, when you die, where is this money gonna go? No, I'm attached to it. There's an attachment between me and this money. مُجَالَسَةِ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ. Then Imam Amir al-Mu'minin comes and says, ذَنْبٌ عَلَى ذَنْبٍ, sin upon sin. See, I may sin once, that may cause a black dot on my heart. But he says, ذَنْبٌ عَلَى ذَنْبٍ, sin upon sin. Where I committed an act, for example, of adultery, the next day I do the same thing. How do you tell us if within 7 hours you don't ask Allah for repentance, then it becomes something imprinted on your heart. That's why our sixth Imam even comes and he tells us that the heart, whenever it commits a sin, a black dot is placed on it. You commit another one, another black dot. He says, until if you commit a plethora of sins, excessively, non-stop, your heart will become completely black. Where now you begin to do good thinking it's evil, and you do evil thinking it's good. Your heart becomes inverted. Therefore you'll see, no tears is a sign of a dead heart. Number one, tears. Number two, the bouncing of the heart is the sign of an accepted dua. See, when I come and I mention to somebody, for example, the name of somebody he loves, somebody who he completely adores, typically your body becomes warm, your heart begins to palpitate, because you just mentioned the beloved to the lover. His heart begins to flourish. It begins something. There's a reaction, a chemical reaction takes place within the heart. He feels something. Those who have an unbelievably profound and sincere relationship with Allah, simply by saying Allah, his heart begins to palpitate. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. The mu'minun are those that when Allah is mentioned, his heart begins to palpitate. That's why they say that one day, when Imam Ruhullah Khomeini was on his deathbed, they would come to him, they would try to wake him up for salah. They would begin to shake him, he wouldn't wake up. They would begin to put ice on his forehead, he wouldn't wake up. They would begin to scream, he wouldn't wake up. Until they did one thing, and instantly, they say the heart of the Imam began to palpitate, and he woke up instantly. They would come to him, they would tell him, Ya Imam, the time of salah has started. They say instantly the heart of the Imam would begin to palpitate. It would begin to bounce. Simply by mentioning salah. For others, if you want to put him to sleep, tell him it's the time of salah. his heart began to bounce. It's the time of Salah. Allah salam, he would stand on the sajada hours before Salah, preparing himself mentally, emptying his heart for Salah. Imam Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, for goodness sake, he would stop battle. Someone would come to him, he would tell him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, how could you stop the battle? It's time to fight. It's not time for Salah. He would tell him, isn't it for Salah we're fighting? The goal is Salah. Therefore, we should stop the battle because the goal is... Therefore, you'll see that a bouncing heart is a sign of an accepted dua. And that's why you'll see within a number of supplications of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, there's unbelievable lines which we should take advantage in reciting in this blessed month. For example, you look at Dua Abu Hamza al-Thamani, which inshallah hopefully we can recite it all together before the end of Ramadan. Dua Abu Hamza al-Thamani is a profound dua where Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam comes speaking to Allah. He says, for example, in one of the lines, وَإِنَّ الرَّاحِلَ إِلَيْكَ قَرِيبُ الْمَسَافَةِ إِلَّا أَن تَحْجُبُهُمُ الْأَعْمَالُ عَنْ دُونِكَ. He says, coming to you, O Allah, there's no distance except that the actions and the sins I've created for myself is what creates the gap between you and I. إِلَّا أَن تَحْجُبُهُمُ الْأَعْمَالُ عَنْ دُونِكَ. We create the gap. Very interesting point Imam is saying. He's saying there's no distance between us and Allah. How many verses do we recite in the Quran where Allah says, وإن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه. Fear Allah because He is the one that hovers between man and his soul. Allah is within insan. For example, another verse that comes in says, فَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you look, Allah is there. Allah is within insan. So when we come and we say there's a distance between man and Allah, there's no distance between us and Allah. There's a distance between us and ourselves. There's no understanding of insan himself. So when the hadith comes, it says, مَنْ عَرِفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرِفَ رَبَّهُ. Know yourself. Allah is there. Allah is perfect. He's infallible. He's understood. He's there. He's clear. He's crystal. The distance is between me and myself. The sins, when I, for example, have jealousy, this is a distance between me understanding myself. Hypocrisy is a distance between me and myself. Therefore, you'll see in Dua Abu Hamza al-Thamani, he mentions that beautiful line. Furthermore, you'll see, for example, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he mentions, he says, Oh Allah, if you were to throw me in hell, I'll tell the inhabitants of hell how much I love you. Look at the lines of the Imam. He says, even if you throw me in hell, I'll be there at the bottom telling the people how much I love you. That's why Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he has nearly 15 supplications known as the munajiyat, the whisperers of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. He has munajat al-shakeen, the munajat of the complainers, munajat al-raghibeen, the munajat of the yearners, munajat al-ta'ibeen, the repenters. These are 15 beautiful du'as. Let us inshallah try to take them on board in these last 5 or 4 nights we have in the month of Ramadan. Furthermore, you'll see the munajat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, which we recited on the nights of Qadr, beautiful lines of the Imam, where he says, مولاي يا مولاي أنت المولى وأنا العبد ومن يرحم العبد إلا المولى. He says, my master, oh my master, you are the master and I am the slave. Who has mercy on the slave except for the master? مولاي يا مولاي أنت الغني وأنا الفقير. You are the rich, I am the poor. Who has mercy on the poor except for the rich? Therefore, you'll see dua, it comes and it breaks the barriers between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are a number of barriers. Number one, you have physical barriers. You have, for example, if you're on the male side and there are females, there's a physical barrier, very simple understanding of barriers and impediments, a physical barrier. You then have social barriers. Many people are socially incapable of carrying conversation, for example, socially awkward. These are social barriers. That's why you'll see there are a number of networks which have understood the gregarious nature of man and they feed it. The social networks we have, Facebook, Twitter, these do what? They know that man is gregarious. He's a social being. He's a social man. Therefore, they feed it socially. You know, what's very interesting is that insan, he has mastered the ways of speaking between man and man, but he has completely neglected how to speak between him and his Lord, him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The month of Ramadan is a time to neglect any social contact in the sense that it's a time for me to speak to Allah. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, finding the Creator is by isolating yourself from the creation. Listen to the words of the Imam. He says finding Allah is by separating yourself. It's not a time to socially interact with one another. Yes, when I have iftar, I'm socially interacting with one another. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of fasting, the social dimension. Yeah, Allah comes and says, separate yourself from man, because that's where you begin to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say for hours, the Holy Prophet of Islam, he would be there in Ghar Hira, Jabal al-Nur, isolating himself from the people, speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's when revelation came to him. You'll notice revelation came to the Prophet only when he was able to separate himself from the masses. You know, we're not a religion of monasticism, but monasticism has a lot of truth into it, monkery. They separate themselves for too long, a little bit too long. But Allah comes and says, for a few hours a day, 1 hour, sit down and just thank Allah for the blessings He has given you. Imam Ruhullah, he mentions in the 40 ahadith, al-arba'un hadith, he says just by sitting down and thinking, you'll realize the greatness of Allah. This air, 15 minutes were it to be deprived from man, you wouldn't have a living organism on this earth. Plants would die, animals would die. Air. He says this vision, be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning what? Ramadan is a time to isolate myself from man and connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you may have some people thinking, for example, that yes, dua is beautiful and removing my barriers from the heart, the grudge, is something very needed, but inshallah next year. You know that famous term, inshallah, next year. You know, if there was a contest for the most butchered words in the world, inshallah would win number one. I remember when I would come to my mom, I would tell her, Mom, could I have $1? She says, inshallah. You know that's a complete no. Inshallah. You know it's not going to happen. Inshallah next year. When I come and I say there are barriers in the heart and it should be removed, inshallah next year, number one, who knows we'll be here next year? How many people do we know were here with us last year? They're not with us this year. Inshallah next year. Sulaiman, as I mentioned previously, he couldn't even wait for a few seconds, let alone inshallah next year. Inshallah next year. You'll see the problem with keeping the barriers inside isn't that it's there and that's it harbors. No, it shapes your character. See, the problem with music, as I mentioned previously, is that it's not only the beats enshape the character of insan. Evil enshapes my character. When Allah comes and says, remove the barriers within yourself, the grudge, the hypocrisy, the arrogance, why is He telling you that? Because if you don't, it's going to enshape for you an evil character. Goodness is what enshapes for you a good character. That's why when we say in our ahadith, we say, Allahumma habbib ilayya al-iman. Oh Allah, make iman something dear to me. Why? Because when I love Allah, this improves my character and improves my relationship with man. The foundation is Allah. The minute Allah is there, the axis and the bedrock being Allah, everything falls intact. You see many people, they try to improve relationships with man. Allah comes and says, the hadith, Man aslaha ma baynahu wa bayna Allah, aslaha Allahu ma baynahu bayna an-nas. If I improve my relationship with Allah, Allah improves my relationship between man and man. Allah comes and says, I'm the database. Connect to me. I'll connect you to everybody else. Just like when you have Wi-Fi, you have the Wi-Fi, the router, the system. Everybody connects to that system, and that gives them internet. It makes no sense to steal internet from the person here next to you, or maybe, I guess, if you're in Tim Hortons or whatever, maybe. You have the database. You connect to the database, and that database connects you to everybody else. In the sense that Allah is seen as the database. Connect to Him, Allah will connect you to everybody else. That's why they say, our maraja, when they look at each other, they would speak very little. They only look at each other and they would know what's happening. They're connected. There's a database. It's a universal language. It's a silent language. They know one another. That's why the Prophet of Islam, one of the qualities that Imam Amir al-Mu'minin comes and gives us of him, he comes and he says, كَانَ قَلِيلُ الْكَلَامِ كَثِيرُ الْتَفَكُّرِ. Little would he speak, much would he think. You see, a wise person has something to say, but a fool has to say something. A wise person, he has something to say, but a fool, he has to say something. You think about, what did you just say? You're trying to put things that just doesn't match. You'll see Fatima alayhi salam, she comes and she says, she makes it very simple, she clarifies it. She says, if you have nothing good to say, please don't say it. Therefore, you'll see a human being who's connected to the ultimate database, there's a connection. When I come and I say that remove it and not inshallah next year, because these evils are in shaping who I am as a human being, it casts me into a wrong mold. You see, this definition of casting is seen as a manufacturing process where you begin to pour material into a mold and it begins to take the character of that mold. Ramadan is a time to ask yourself, am I going to cast myself in the mold of Allah or in the mold of shaitan? Who do I want to cast myself into? You see, today people, they will take gold. You want to make a necklace, you mold it into the cast of a necklace. You want to make a cup, you put it into the shape of a cup. Allah comes and says that Ramadan is the time to make the decision, none other time than Ramadan. Do I want to cast myself in the mold and in shape of shaitan or in the mold of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Both of them could shape me a character. Allah comes and gives me role models. Shaitan comes and gives me celebrities. It's your choice. Who do you want to shape? You want to follow the singers or you want to follow Amir al-Mu'mineen? It's your shape. It's your choice. Allah comes and says, it's not my choice, it's yours. Because insan is like a chameleon. You place him on a red surface, he turns red. You place him on a blue surface, he turns blue. He adapts to the environment you place him on. That's why you'll see a number of youth, you place him, for example, in Muharram, you'll see him beating his chest with his shirt off. In the summertime, his shirt is off, but he's in the beach. So you'll see, we're products of our environment. Allah comes and gives me role models, uswatun hasana. Shaitan comes and gives me celebrities. When I say cast yourself and mold it, what do I mean? You look at Musa alayhi salam. Allah would look at him. He would tell him, Ya Musa, wastana'tuka li nafsi. I've molded you to my satisfaction. Look at the insan who has been molded. Ahlul Bayt are products molded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's so finely tuned. He's so perfectly shaped. No rough edges until he became a ma'soom. A ma'soom is one who completely has adapted to himself the character of Allah. See, the hadith comes and says, تَخَلَّقُ بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. To act with the characteristics of Allah. Someone come and say, how could I act with the characteristics of Allah? No, Allah is Rahman. Insan should be Rahman as well. Mold yourself in the cast of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and gives us dua. Shaitan comes and gives us music. Allah comes and gives us Quran. Shaitan comes and gives us 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and gives us what? He comes and he gives us halal food. Shaitan comes and gives you drugs. I was just in Vancouver and there was these, we went to buy some Slurpee from a restaurant, and while we were there, a couple of boys came and they began to try to instigate a fight with us. I told them, so we left, we finished from that, alhamdulillah, everything was safely ended. We leave, we go back to the masjid, and I would ask the boy, I would tell him, why did this kid come and attempt to create a fight with us? You didn't do anything to him. He would say, no, this boy is on shrooms. I told him, I'm not, what do you mean shrooms? No, the boy is on, I told him, I know mushrooms, what's shrooms? So the boy is on shrooms. I told him, what shrooms? He's like, shrooms is something that, it's a very common trend in the world of youth today. He'll smoke it or he'll smell it, I don't know what they do to it, and he begins to see he begins to hallucinate. If you look at him wrongly, he detects a threat. He continued, he told me a very interesting story. He would say one day, they were with their friends, and one of his friends had shrooms. Why was he with someone who had shrooms? I don't know, but he was with him. And all of a sudden, his friend books it. He begins to run. So they went and they caught him. They would tell him, why are you running? He was like, the tree is running after me. Don't you see the tree? I have to run away from the tree. So you see, shrooms comes and completely, it gives man, it's an intoxicant. It's a hallucinant. It makes man hallucinate. Shaitan comes in and says, you want to have happiness? Come and listen to this song. Just bounce those beats in your mind. There it is, you're on cloud nine. Smell those shrooms and you're on. See, people who take drugs, in essence, it's a very psychological, very interesting point that the reason why they take drugs. It's because you can't handle reality. So besides facing reality, I run away from it by intoxicating my mind. Music is on the same level. Many people come and ask, why is music haram? The reason why music is seen as unacceptable, the indecent music, ghina, one which is suitable for majalis ahlillah, as Ayatollah mentioned, is unacceptable. Why? Because it intoxicates the brain. See, a lot of you come to you and tell them, why do you like music? They'll say, brother, when I listen to it, I feel unbelievable. I feel like I'm so relaxed. I feel like I'm on cloud nine. Ask him one simple question. When you take this, headphones out of your ear, do you still feel relaxed? He would tell you, no, actually, I feel angry and I feel very mad. Notice, only for those few minutes, he enjoys it. And if something was a permanent source of relaxation, then it should make you feel comfortable. Why are you listening to it and even after? Yeah, no. The minute you take it off, you begin to feel anger. You have to put it back in. You're addicted to it. Music is intoxicant, just like alcohol. You can place alcohol and music and drugs all on a parallel level. They're forms of intoxicants of the brain. Allah comes and says, intoxicate yourself, but my remembrance suffices as intoxicant. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. With the remembrance of Allah, hearts become satisfied. The month of Ramadan, brothers and sisters, is a time to ask myself, which mold do I want to cast myself into? Who do I want to be like? Every day the mu'min wakes up should ask himself, am I one who strives to be like the Holy Prophet of Islam, or have I set other role models? Because Allah comes and makes it very clear, the best of role models for the mu'mineen is nobody except the Prophet of Islam. Allah comes and says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Indeed, the best of examples for you is none other than Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let us use these last nights, brothers and sisters, that we have to gain closeness to Allah and to detect the diseases. Grudges is only one of the most intense diseases that man has as a barrier between him and Allah. But the intensity and interesting point about grudge to make is that not only is it a barrier between Allah and man, it's a barrier between man and man. You'll see it takes years to build a friendship, but moments to ruin it. Let us not allow, if there is a barrier in our hearts, such as the grudge towards our parents, for example, towards our father, tonight is the night to improve that relationship. If I have a problem with a friend who I've had such a strong relationship and something happened, tonight is the night to make that phone call and to inform him that let's change things for the better. If I have a cousin which I have an animosity towards, a brother, you'll see very interesting, you'll see people, he hasn't spoken to his brother for years, he hasn't spoken to his father for months. This is the same father that brought him to this world. This is the same brother that they lived together basically in the same diaper. Allah comes and says, grudges could create a barrier. If Habil was killed by his brother Qabil because of a grudge, shouldn't also we be aware of the intensity of the grudge? And that's why Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and tells us, remove any barrier from your heart, empty it so that Allah could come and fill it for you. Look at the beauty of the word. Empty it so that Allah could fill it for you. May Allah give us the opportunity to empty our hearts for Him. Listen to the words of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam when he says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma wa farriq qalbi li mahabbatik. He says, oh Allah, empty my heart for your love. Washghulhu bi dhikrik. And make it busy with your remembrance. وَانْعِشْهُ بِخَوْفِكَ. And enshroud it with the fear of you. وَقَوِّهِ بِالرَّغْبَةِ إِلَيْكَ. And strengthen it by yearning towards you. وَبِالرَّغْبَةِ إِلَيْكَ. 5 times, and may you jib with the loudness of your voices. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. More time to hasten the appearance of our Imam. Amman yujibu al-barra idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. Ya kashif as-su' akshif as-su' anna ya Allah. Allahumma shafi kulla marid bihaqi maridika bala zayn al-abidin. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين واخذل الكفر والمنافقين. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه, and to answer our du'as and to hasten the reappearance of our Imam. We recite Surah Al-Fatiha, but before I salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.